Let me start that again. Hello lovelies, welcome to the July 2022 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name's Leslie and this is a podcast about predominantly knitting and crochet, but also a bit of spinning, very occasional weaving, even a bit of machine knitting. I record at home on the south coast of the UK. I record throughout the month and then put things together kind of vlog style and post at the last weekend of the month. Now, if once a month of me is not enough for you, yeah. I also do a weekly vlog, Not Quite Enough Distance. You can tell it started during COVID, can't you? And that goes up on a Friday. How are we? I hope everyone's okay. We are going through a bit of a heat wave in the UK here at the moment. I will not be wearing any handlets, sorry. Very, very warm. Forecast to have hottest ever recorded temperature. So that's where we're at. So we're very much working in the bits of the house that are the coolest at any given time of day. Please excuse the squawking of seagulls. Like I say, I live on the coast and the windows are open because of the heat. So I hope you're okay. I hope wherever you are in the world you're keeping cool enough, warm enough, comfortable. It's called the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast because although I have 3 cupboards and a bit more, I rarely have enough of the same colour or the same base to make a whole garment. So I do a lot of stripes, blocks, that kind of thing. And with that in mind, we have a make-along running this year, which is the Clearly Not Quite Enough Yarn Sweater Make-Along. And the idea is that you make an adult size garment in more than one yarn. It can be the same base but from 2 different manufacturers, so if you've got lots of different sock yarns or something like that that you're putting into a garment, that's all grand. It can be from the same dyer or manufacturer but different bases. The thing that I ask is that it's not just different colourways of the same base and maker. So it is actually putting together yarns from different sources, or different yarns from the same source, if you see what I mean. And also I ask that the demarcation is clear, which is why it's the Clearly Not Quite Enough Yarn, la 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 la. So if you're holding, say, mohair and 4-ply weight yarn together, but it's the same all the way through, that's not eligible. This is about putting yarns together. You know, perhaps you're running out and you decide to add something in from stash, that type of thing. The make-along is run on Ravelry. There is a group on Ravelry for the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast, and there's a thread on there for the make-along. So by all means add works in progress pictures, your colour combinations, ask advice, what do you think of this colour, would you prefer that one, that kind of thing. Comment on other people's posts. It's very much a conversation and that's what we like. Other rules. It started, when did it start? Beginning of May, I think it was. No more than, you could have a work in progress at that point, but no more than, I think it was 50% completed. And you don't have to finish by the end of the year, which is when the make-along will end, but at least 75% finished to be eligible. With regards to prizes, I do 2 draws from the thread. I did one in June, I'll do one in September, 2 each time. Random number generator. If it's a comment without a picture, then it's a pattern prize, and if it's a comment with a picture, it's a physical prize. So usually yarn, but it may be something else. Yeah. If you are unable to use Ravelry, by all means email your entry to me using notquiteenoughYarn@gmail.com, and if you can just confirm whether or not you're happy for me to post the picture that you sent through on onto the Ravelry thread, I'll put a post in the thread so that you're in order, and you'll be in the drawer that way too. I think that's all the rules. Makes sense. Making wise, I've got a little FO to show you, a very little FO. And this is a pair of gloves for my mate Mandy, who asked if I could make her a pair of fingerless gloves for in the colder weather when she's sitting at home reading, just to keep her hands warm but still be able to turn the pages. So I went to my pattern library, physical rather than digital this time, and found this pattern, which is Serda 5761. As you can see, it's of a certain age, certainly been well used. I don't know how old this pattern is. It's got my mum's writing on it, so whether it was hers and I then kind of purloined it while I was still living at home, or whether it came to me after she died among with her other knitting stuff, I'm really not sure. But there is my writing on it as well, so clearly it has been used by me in the past. What I've done this time is scan the pages so that I can write all over my scanned page. So it's a double knitting weight glove and mitten pattern, and here are the gloves that I've made. So these are made out of Fruitful Fusion Merino Nylon DK in the Notebook colourway. So it's 75% merino, 25% nylon. Lovely colours. That's coming up pretty accurately. So purples, blues, teals, some browns. Really nice colour combination. And I'm hoping these will do the trick. Okay. So that's a very quick little FO. I used 59 grams of the yarn, which works out to 140 metres, something like that. I'm going to write it down. Oh, 133 metres. There we go. So that's these gloves, which I shall pass to my lovely friend Mandy, although I suspect she won't be in a rush for them just yet because of the weather. The next section on this podcast is a machine knitted item that I've made. Now this is the Paris sweater by Sarah Keller. I had started making a crochet version of this. It's a free pattern, so I'm not giving away any secrets. Basically, you make a big rectangle, fold it in half. It gives you directions of how to sew it together to make it into a sweater. Now, some people have added ribs for welt and cuff to make it a very definite sweater pattern. Others have left it kind of loose and flowing, more of a poncho. I, from looking at it, knew that it wouldn't be able to live up to its first promise, which is this will look great on everyone. Well, it won't go round this one, so I would question that. So I made this first version that you're about to see slightly bigger, and you'll see my progress. So I had a panel that I'd made on the knitting machine. I decided that would be a lot quicker than crocheting, and it does. It is. So yes, I've got that on the. I made that on the knitting machine. The footage here is of me putting it together, trying to adjust from the instructions given on the pattern, and how that goes. Now, because I recorded this on my phone without a tripod and into a mirror, apologies that the film quality is extremely poor and quite shaky. So if you're sensitive to movement, motion sickness and that sort of thing, please do skip ahead until you see just me again, just me sitting at my desk. I have done a second Paris, made a few mods which you'll see why based on the next bit of footage, and when I talk about that later in the month, because I've nearly finished it, I'll do a quick recap as to why I made the modifications. So if you're not able to watch the next bit, you won't miss out too much, and it will hopefully all make sense when you see the later second Paris. After the wobbly footage, you'll see me sitting at my desk. I had a couple of questions following on from last month's podcast, which very grateful for. Always please do ask questions, do comment. Often I'll answer questions at the time and just reply back in the comments, but these I thought would be of perhaps broader interest, hopefully, so I've answered them whilst and recorded my answer. So yes, a lot of talking, not much showing knitting. Apologies, that will be rectified later in the month. I think that's it for now, so I'll catch up with you later. Cheers. But I decided, as I had the knitting machine operational, to make a piece. And in the pattern, and it's a free pattern, so I have no compunction in showing you this, it tells you how to, once you've got your big piece of fabric, fold it in half, and then how to sew pieces together and leave gaps for head, sleeves, body. Yeah, this as set wasn't going to fit me, so the piece I've made is bigger, and I've tried to keep the neck opening the same, but change some of the others because I'm going to need more. And what I've done is I've used the light bulb pins to show where the marks are between the sewn and unsewn pieces, and then I've clipped together the seams as they should be. So having done that, I'm about to try it on for the first time. Now I can pretty much guarantee that this body opening will not go around my body, but let's give it a go, shall we? Yep, couldn't even get it on. So not in the Marvin Gaye song sense, just couldn't get the sweater onto me. So I'm going to try a bit of adjustment of seams. Okay, so we're in the downstairs doodah, so it's a bit echoey, but yeah, this is it with my alterations. Sorry, let me try and get my phone out of the way so you can see it better. Maybe I didn't make it long enough. This was an experimental piece. I have tried to keep the neck opening the same because my neck isn't necessarily massively bigger than anyone else's. What I might try and do actually is kind of shift this. So close this up a little here, open it a bit more here, and move the side seam. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be crocheting the one that I've started. Not at this rate, anyway. Yeah, I think that's worked a little better. I was hoping to be able to show you the dog in the mirror, but the angles are all wrong. I had doubts that it would be actually suitable for someone of a different size, and it looks like my doubts were realised. I don't like to be beaten, so don't be surprised if I don't try and make another one of these, perhaps make it longer. And I'm not sure what the answer is. You're basically taking a square, a rectangle, and making it into a three-dimensional shape to go over a curved person. So I'm going to sew it together because I am conscious that trying something on when it's clipped together and pinned, it doesn't sit as it will do. Yeah, maybe machine knitting is the best for this because it's quick. We shall see. Okay, lovelies, this is it sewn, and it does sit better because it's sewn. That's kind of how it works. I think what I'm going to do with this is continue, and what I mean by that is that I will edge the armholes, the hem, probably not the neck actually, I think that sits better as a loose piece. And the yarn is cotton, so I'm going to stick it through the washing machine a couple of times and let it stretch out a bit. and see how we go from there. So, yes, this is the Paris sweater. I still take issue with it looking fabulous on everybody. I think there are limits to that. But it's actually not as bad as it could be. I might try another. If I make the pieces a little longer, perhaps a little wider as well, because I do like things to be a little longer than this. But as a throw over, I mean, basically it's a poncho that we're making, isn't it, rather than a sweater. But yeah, it's okay. That's damning with faint praise, isn't it? But it's all right. Hello, lovelies. I'm just replying to messages from various vlogs and last month's podcast. There's one here from Shirley, and I feel it's probably easiest if I just talk to you rather than type it all in. So she was asking how many years of marriage, himself and myself, and how did we meet, and how did I get into my secular profession. So one thing at a time. Himself and I married in 1995, so however many years that is, 27. We lived together for 2 years before that. I know, how shocking. And actually I moved in about 6 months after I met him because I'm very forward. We met because I had taken a job in a pub, and he was a regular customer of the pub. So his first words to me were very romantic. They were, "A pint of Guinness, please." Which actually shows you it wasn't that good a pub, because he's normally a real ale man, but they served Guinness and he drank it, so that's fine. Yeah, so that was how we met. It was quite funny because other people in the pub thought we would get along and were sort of trying to get us together. So there was I think it was a pub quiz, so they put us on the same team and that sort of thing. So we kind of got chatting. And I asked him what he did for a living. And he said, "I build computer models." And I thought, oh, that makes a change from saying you're a pilot. Because I didn't believe him. So the poor lad, he did build computer models. That was his job until he retired. And I thought he was trying to be impressive. Not that I really had an understanding of what that was, but yeah, so that was how we met many, many years ago. So like I say, we got married in 1995 and been married since then. So I hope that answers that question. And how did I get into my secular profession? Well, my secular profession isn't always secular. Although I am not a religious person, I am a funeral celebrant first and a humanist second, if you like. So this means that if someone wants the Lord's Prayer or a hymn, I'm not going to say, oh no, you couldn't possibly, because it's for them to have what is appropriate for them. If it looks as if they want a really religious ceremony, then I will encourage them down the, have you thought about having a vicar type of route? But that, you know, normally my ceremonies are predominantly secular, and quite often it's people who don't want a religious minister because they don't want a sermon element in the funeral, but they still might want a religious element. One might even call it an insurance policy, a just-in-case moment. And that's not to be disrespectful to those who have a deeply held faith, but I think there are a lot of people in that grey area who they feel they ought to have something, but they're not quite sure what it is. So they'll stick in the Lord's Prayer or something like that because it feels like a good option. So yeah, so how did I get into this? The year my mother died was the year I was approaching 40. And apologies if any of you have heard this story before. I'm probably repeating myself. But it's been a few years, I can't remember. So yes, anyway, hitting 40, mother died. Both things that make you sort of stop and think, what am I doing with my life? At the time, I was working for an invoice finance company. I'd been doing that for about 20 years. And it was beginning to, well, it wasn't just beginning, it was feeling, I've tended in the past to work in sort of administration type roles and office type roles because that's where my skills have been. But they haven't always been jobs where I feel as if I've contributed much to the world, if you see what I mean. It feels like I've worked to make other people money, which hasn't always felt terribly valuable. Not there's anything wrong with making money, you know, I'm not getting all judgmental on it, but it just didn't feel as if I was doing anything worthwhile. So I went through these two kind of life events, so that got the brain ticking. Then a friend's husband died very suddenly, and she has a faith, but her husband didn't have one. So they were having a vicar, a minister, for the ceremony. But she was a bit worried about meeting him because she didn't want him to be, you know, hellfire and brimstone. She just wanted a fairly simple ceremony for her husband, but with a religious element for her. And she was worried about meeting him and, you know, how that was all going to go, because she was going through a huge thing at the time. This isn't Mandy, this is my other friend. I have two. That's not true. And I sort of said to her, oh, well, look, if it's horrible, I'll take the ceremony. Well, thankfully, that reverend was a sweetheart and did a cracking job, because had I taken her husband's funeral, I don't think I would ever have taken another one, because it just would have been too much, too overwhelming. I would have messed it up, and just, it would have been, I'm very glad I didn't have to do it. But I guess it kind of planted a seed, because a few days later I kind of woke up with the idea, actually, I would quite like to do that. I had been to some humanist funerals and had always been impressed by them. So I started looking into it, and that was really how it all started. So I had to wait for a while. There wasn't any space in my area. And that was frustrating for me, but quite good, because I felt at the time as if I'd made the decision quickly, because I'd looked at this sort of, you need these skills part on their website, and I thought, well, I can do that, you know. There are so many things in life I can't do that when you find some that the whole job spec is stuff you can do, you think, I ought to give that a go. But I felt as if I had made that decision really quickly. So the fact that I had to wait was quite good, because it surprised me how disappointed I was that I had to wait, and I kept contacting the training guy, sort of, still here, still keen, hello, you know, just I didn't want to be kind of lost in the system somewhere. So it proved to me how much I really wanted to do it, which was valuable time. So I started training beginning of 2008, did my first ceremony April or May 2008. The training at that point, I think it's changed since then, and I've been a trainer for that organisation as well. The training was part residential, part working with a mentor, so you would sort of accompany them to visits and ceremonies, and they would conduct the visit, but you'd write up the ceremony and they would assess it and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's how I became a celebrant. I did used to take weddings and namings as well, but the funerals suit me better. I think it's to do with the kind of working. Weddings can be 2 years in the organisation, and they don't really suit my way of working, whereas funerals tend to happen within sort of 2 to 3 weeks on average. So that suits me better. That just kind of suits my working pattern. So thank you for the question, Shirley. The questions, I should say. I hope that answers them. And yes, thank you for being interested. Cheers. Hello, lovelies. How are we? Another response to a comment here. So thank you for the comment. And thank you in this case to Melanie, who writes, let me find the piece. I was wondering if at some time for your vlog you could share a bit of how you document your amounts used of material for a project you finished. Is it by measuring what's left over and subtracting from originally a designated amount? I would also like to see how you record your projects after completion. I admit I never really even thought about doing so until I saw some numbers you'd given in a vlog that estimated the amount of yarn you'd used in a specific period. And if I had a picture of all the projects I'd made over the years, what memories would be tied up in them. So yes, thank you, Melanie. My process is twofold but simple. For the first part of it, I use Ravelry. So my project pages, certainly for completed projects, are fairly up to date. I know there are some that can't use Ravelry, but for those that can, all my projects are on there. If you ever want to see an item I've made, go back to it for any reason, it's there. Measuring yarn used, all my stash, as far as I know, is on Ravelry. Occasionally I come up with the odd sort of ball from deep stash that I haven't got on there, but as far as I know, everything is on there. And what I do is I have a spreadsheet, which will surprise no one who's ever worked with me, because I love a spreadsheet. I think spreadsheets are fab. So any new yarn that I get is added on, and any yarn that I use is taken off. I'll put a picture here of one from a couple of years ago, or part of it, so you can see the sort of thing I mean. How do I measure that? Well, mostly it's looking at the ball band. So 100 grams of fingering or 4-ply weight is, say, 400 meters. If I use 50 grams, I know I've used 200 meters. So yes, as you say, completely correct. See what I've got left and take that from the starting position. Not everything has a ball band, especially if you're a spinner. So I also measure it in other ways, and I do everything in meterage because I feel that most accurately reflects workload in a project. You could make a chunky sweater and have something that's a lot of grams, but actually it's been quite a quick make, and you could have a lace weight or a 4-ply weight sweater that's taken hours but doesn't weigh that much. And so if I was doing it by weight, I don't think that would accurately reflect what I'm doing. Now, there are no perfect systems. The sweater I made... Oh, excuse me. The computer beeping at me then. The sweater I made where I held 4-ply weight yarn with 3 strands of fine viscose, that's arguably an artificially inflated meterage, because I'm counting the meterage of each of the strands. You could also argue that maybe I should have just taken that meterage and divided it by 4, because had I used worsted weight yarn, that's how many meters I would have used. There are no perfect systems. I think with any measuring system, as long as you're consistent, then the rest, it doesn't matter. And actually, it doesn't matter anyway, because this is only for my own satisfaction and my own interest. So, knowing that I've used X amount of meters, it's interesting to me. It may be interesting to you, and if it is, I thank you. But it's not that vital. So it's just a system, and one that I'm fairly consistent in. If I don't have a ball band, then I have a couple of ways of measuring. My niddy noddy, I know that once wrapped around that is 1.9 meters. So I can wrap some leftover yarn around that and work out how much there is that way. I also have a small measuring device which the yarn feeds through, and it measures it in feet. It's actually based on a device that's used for measuring the depth of fishing line. So again, I can wind up yarn, and if I'm winding up something, for example some hand spun, that I don't know what the meterage is, I will put it through that as I wind it up. And that's another way of measuring the meterage. So yeah, like I say, it doesn't really matter what your system is, as long as you like working it and it's consistent, I would guess. So I like having a record of what I've made. It gives me a sense of achievement. That's why I do the thing at the end of the month, which I guess is at the end of the year rather, which I guess is the thing you're talking about, Melanie, with the roundup of the year's projects and how many meters I've used. It just kind of helps me see what I've made, seen how any skills and techniques have progressed, and gives me a sense of what I've used, particularly as in theory I am trying to reduce my stash. Yes, you can laugh in your own time. It does help me to kind of see where I am. And also at the end of last year I took another measurement. I have been saying for a long time that I have reached sable, which as we all know is stash acquired beyond life expectancy. So out of curiosity, I looked at how many meters of yarn I had and compared it with, I think, the last 2 or 3 meters average usage to see how many years worth of yarn I had. It was about 6.5. Yeah. So yes, that's another measure. These measures are measures for measure's sake, really. Ultimately, as long as you enjoy what you're making and it serves the purpose you require of it, the rest really doesn't matter. But I'm from a working numbers background originally, and I think this helps me to feel a sense of where I'm headed. Because obviously we have to be on a journey. We can't aimlessly wander anywhere. Yeah, I don't know why either. But no, thank you very much for the question, Melanie. And Melanie says that she may well start a folder of the works that she's made. I think that's a great idea. Like I say, I do the electronic version because I use Ravelry. I know a friend from Knitting Group has a beautifully organised file where she keeps every pattern and the print that she's used, so the ones with her notes on. I believe she keeps her swatch in there. I don't know if she puts a photograph of the finished object, but everything that relates to that project is in that folder. So she has that. It's a very useful reference for her, I think, if she wants to make something again, or just as a memory jogger. So I hope that answers the question, Melanie, and thank you very much for asking it. Hello, lovelies. The light is doing strange things. We've still got a lot of sun. It's early evening here, but we've still got a lot of sun coming through. So I've got the curtains drawn and the lights on, which I hope will work. I have a finished object. This one has been on the go since, I think, March. It's not blocked. If I waited until I blocked it, I probably wouldn't get it on this month's podcast. The last weekend of the month, I've got a couple of sort of fairly long day commitments, so if I waited till next weekend to record, it wouldn't happen. And I want to share the love with you now because I have finished, well, I think I've just seen an end that I could do with weaving in. I have finished my panel jacket. I'm going to put a picture here of me wearing it. It's too warm for me to put it on. I'm not even going to put it on Enid. Too warm for her. She's got all those shawls on already. She doesn't need a cardigan. So this is my panel jacket by Carol. Well, it's not by Carol Lapin at all. The original concept was Carol Lapin. Any good ideas are hers, any bad ideas are mine. We'll leave it at that. So the idea is it's made in panels, the panels are joined together. Bob's your uncle. The basic construction is very simple. Now, I did most of this on the flatbed knitting machine, but the previous one of these that I'd made was before I had the machine, and I did it all by hand. So anything I've done here could be done by hand. It would just take longer, that's all. So this is the back central panel, which is a little wider. Then we have, in my case, 3 each side, front and back, of these narrower panels. Obviously, if you were making it for a slimmer body, you'd have fewer panels. The idea of the centre back one is it's kind of equivalent for the back neck, so So that's how I've put it together. I mean, if it's something that you're interested in doing, it really is make it up as you go along. The sleeves are made out of 2 panels, straight seam, straight line one side, increases on the other, working from the cuff up to give them that shape when I've sewn them together. Once I had all the panels, I then joined them by crochet, and let me give you a quick close-up here. The only seam I didn't join by crochet was the shoulder seam. I had started doing it and I found that the tension was completely out and it was going very frilly and so forth, so I've grafted that, not terribly evenly. You could use a Kitchener graph. I use a Finchley because it's easier, I find it easier to remember, but it really doesn't matter. I'm doing this all in the wrong order, aren't I? At the bottom of each panel, I did a few rows of garter for the base, and I did the same for the cuffs. I then picked up stitches up the front, across the centre back panel, and down the other front for the shawl collar. Now I picked the stitches up in the contrast, did another row knitting back, and then changed to my main colour. I'll go through the yarns in a sec. And because I wanted a shawl collar on this, I did a couple of panels of short rows, I did a couple of blocks of sort of short rows to give the shawl collar effect. Comme ça. The panels aren't completely straight. They start off, they were made bottom up, they start off a couple of stitches wider, and then I just decrease 1 stitch each side, about 30 rows in, decrease 1 stitch each side, another 30 rows in, and then knitted straight to give a little bit of shaping for hips. Now I did swatch for this on the machine. They have come up a little shorter than I was expecting, but we know that swatches lie, so that's okay. As I say, I haven't blocked this yet. I will hopefully unflip the flipping, and also it may go down, it's merino, so it may go a little longer. So again, I'll put a picture in here so you can see me wearing it, because I'm talking about it and not making a lot of sense. About normal. Yarns. So my main yarn was a cone, a 500-gram cone, which is 1800 meters of King Cole merino blend, which is 100% merino in the petrol colourway. And I was quite surprised when I was using this that actually, I don't know if you can see that on there, probably not, but the colour does come out of the yarn. So when I block it in a minute, definitely a couple of colour catches in the water. Talking with a friend of mine who's a dyer, some dyes are more prone to, I don't know what the technical term is, leaching colour, I don't know. And turquoise family apparently quite renowned for this. So because it's in that area, that may be why. It's a yarn I've used before in other colourways and not had the problem. So it may just be this cone, it may have been this batch, it may be this colourway, but not a problem. It comes off fairly quickly when I wash my hands. Just something to kind of be aware of. And I have some other cones of this, so when I use those I'll gauge whether it's just, you know, specific to this or not. The contrast is, let me get that for you, I'm showing you what I've got left. Yes, I have yarn left. I know, probably because it's too short. Yeah, so that's what I've got left of the petrol. So I used 1500 yards of that, all but. But again, that's making it for my size. So if you're making a smaller version, you use less yarn. That stands to reason. The contrast, it's a yarn that I don't think you can get anymore. It was given to me in a swap. and I have this much of it left. I'm not entirely sure of the maker, so I won't say. And as I say, it was old stash that I swapped with someone, so probably no point in telling you what it is, apart from the fact it's pretty, and I found that the colours worked well. It's got blues in here which match in very well with that petrol colour, and I used 68 grams of that, which is about 250 metres. So all told, about 1750 metres for this. And yeah, needs a blocking. What I do find interesting is that it's not, oh yeah, it's showing up a bit. It looks as though the garter stitch panel is a darker colour than the stocking stitch panel. And I don't know why that is. And on the inside as well. Less obvious there. But, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. But it's interesting. Yeah. So whether it's the way the light's catching the yarn or what it is, I don't know. But definitely looks a darker colour. It's coming up quite obviously on camera, and on the pictures that I've taken, it's looked like that. But, I do not know why. I have a commercial sweater which has a pattern of stocking stitch and reverse stocking stitch, and it has its yarn held together with a glitter yarn, and the glitter yarn shows up a lot more on the reverse stocking stitch. So whether it's just something to do with the way the light catching the ridges, I don't know. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about it, I'm just interested. So that, 4 months in the making, is my panel sweater. And although it is shorter than I intended, I think it will be very useful, even if it doesn't stretch much with the blocking. It's another one that I will use over my work dresses, and they can be shorter because they're going over frocks, as my grandmother used to call them. So I think that will work well as a wardrobe staple. It feels as if I've been working on it for ages. The funny thing was, the shawl collar felt as though it took such a long time. I think because I'd made the panels so quickly, and there was that time when I realised I'd only made half as many as I needed, as you do. So I came and made the other half, and that took an evening. Which is a little ridiculous. To then hand knit the shawl collar, it just seemed to take such a long time. But I think that's just kind of relative speeds rather than anything else. And as I often say, knitting is not a race. You know, it doesn't matter if something takes a long time, except I wanted to get it finished. When I'm working on something, especially something that's predominantly a single colour, which as we know doesn't happen that often, but I do find, much as I enjoy the colour, I do get a bit sick of looking at it. So I think I was getting fed up with looking at this blue and it coming out over my hands and all of that. But it is now done. So I shall block it with colour catchers in the water, and we'll go from there. And I dare say you will see it being worn in future podcasts. Hello lovelies, I've been sent some gorgeousness. Look. There was the hope that I would meet the lovely Susan, who was in the UK, but it was at a time when we were going through extreme heat and travelling anywhere was ill-advised and officially advised against. So unfortunately it didn't get to happen, but she very kindly sent me these fabulous minis. These are all from Emma's Yarn, because she wanted to send me some things from her local yarn shop, which is 4 Pearls Yarn Studio. So she sent me a pin as well. Thank you. And hello. So I feel very spoiled. But I've got these fabulous minis. They're 20 grams, 50 yards. Superwash Merino nylon mix, the Simply Spectacular smalls, and I will go through these gorgeous colours. So in no particular order: vacay, fabulous pinks and greens, Mexican wedding dress. Loving the turquoise and purples in here. Happily Ever After. A real good mixture of colours in there, just fabulous. No flash photography. And that is, and I've got light as you can see coming from this side, but that is absolutely highlighter yellow. Gnarly. It's coming up a little sort of yellower greener. It's a fairly true turquoise. Shut the Front Door. And this is coming up a little darker. Again, it's a highlighter pink. Cat's Meow. Pinks and purples. And this is 80s Rewind. So pinks, greens, speckles of yellow. Just really lovely. Now these babies, they're all double knitting weight. These aren't even going to hit the cupboards, because I already know what to do with these, because I think these will be really beautiful centres for the snowflakes I'm making for that snowstorm crochet sweater / cardigan. Black borders, all different colours in the middle, and what a fabulous collection of colours and yarns to put in it. So thank you so much, Susan. We will meet one day, hopefully. But thank you so much for sending these. It's a yarn brand I'd heard of, and I'm delighted to be able to feel just how squishy it is, because it is. And just absolutely thrilled. So thank you so much. And by the time you see this, you'll be home safely, having slept in your own bed, hopefully. And I hope you had a great trip to Europe. Thank you so much. Hello lovelies, this is Paris sweater number 2. That's a pen falling on the floor. And what I've done, again, this is a free pattern, so I'm not giving away anything you can't find for nothing. Excuse the shadows. I've marked on the pattern what my sizes are for the piece of fabric. Now, one thing I have realised with doing this and with the panel jacket that you've just seen, on the knitting machine, row gauges definitely lie. Because I thought I was making a piece that would have been 33 inches that way. That's folded in half, so 66. Actually, mine's shorter. This may not be a problem at all, because I am looking at a different proportion to fit around my body, but we'll see. Rather than clip it this time, I've done a bit like sort of tacking or basting. So I'm going to go and try this on, and I've marked on here what I've sewn. So 9 inches for the arms, 15 for the neck, etc. And we'll see how we go. Right, now it's quite a sheer fabric, so I hope I'm not revealing too much. What I've done, I'm still in the downstairs doodah, but hopefully not moving my camera around so much this time, making everyone feel a little nauseous. So I've put together side seams, but actually I've taken them apart again. It could possibly do with being a little longer as a piece of fabric, but I'm not sure. I think I'm going to keep it as is. Now what I've done, sorry, a bit too much flesh there. What we'll basically have is a very short side seam on this side and shorter than planned on this side. I may even take that up a little more. The arm holes are long enough, deep enough. This one feels like it's in the wrong place, but that's because of the width of the fabric. So I'm standing by my initial, this does not look good on everyone, or it doesn't feel good on everyone. But, it's a usable item. What I did say I might do, and I was talking with a knitting friend the other evening, is perhaps ruche this a bit, so it pulls this up a little. But I don't know that I will. I think I'm just going to see it as is. I mean, I could even not do the side seams and just have it as a poncho, which may work. But, yes, pondering. Hello lovelies. Paris sweater number 2. Yeah, you saw it sort of in the throes of making. I just don't find it an easy to wear sweater. That may be because I still haven't got the proportions right, but it just feels kind of flappy. So what would I need to do to make it fit better? For example, this bottom seam, I've got a t-shirt on, you're safe today. The original pattern has this side seam sewn all the way up so that this bottom seam becomes more level. I've got a point, a bit like I had the opposite in a sleeve on the first version. To make that work, I would have to make a longer piece. So that would be the answer. I'm not going to make another one of these. I'm not going to, frankly, waste my time, because even, I mean, I know I was a bit daft last time because I was saying, you know, I'm trying to make a sweater that I probably won't particularly want to wear. I wanted to see if I could make the pattern work. I can see now how to make the pattern work, which is to make the piece longer, not necessarily any wider than I have at the moment, but longer. And you could then sew it up as initially intended, but it's then a sweater that I wouldn't wear because flappy here, not my style at all. I don't do dolmans. I like a sweater I can put a coat on top of. I mean, that's if I were to make it longer, this sleeve would also be longer, and so you'd have more fabric here. So I'm creating an item that I wouldn't want. So. But this is the item I have, so let's talk about yarns. These were a couple of cones from the stash. This is Texair DY.347 fine linen and cotton. Exactly what it says on the tin. And I didn't have enough of that, so I had to put the second piece in. And this, I've no idea what it is because it's just a load of numbers. It says R132 Tex 2. Now whether that was Texair yarns or anything else, I don't know. 215 NM, so there's the weight of it. Got this on a D-stash from, I think, eBay or a local group a long time ago. So because the way the machine was playing up, it was as the weather was starting to warm up, I did this bit in one piece, and then the brown I did in two, so you can see we've got a seam up the middle. It's stocking stitch, so obviously it curls, and I had it half seamed, held it up, and it looked like a pair of tights, so that amused me greatly. I think in total it's about 2,500 meters. It is a very fine weight yarn. I mean, you can see these are very fine yarns at a very fine gauge, so that's what gives it this drape, because it's like a sort of jersey fabric more than a knitted fabric, if you see what I mean. And I know that jersey fabric is knitted, but because it's machine done and very fine, it does have this drape, which is great, and that would work for this sweater. Does work for this sweater. But yes, it's stuff, the sort of stuff that I would normally ply with something else to get more use out of. So the Paris sweater, I am keeping a note for myself of the measurements that I've taken, you know, the way that I've sewn it, in case I do want to use it again, although I think we all know that that's unlikely. There's nothing wrong with the pattern. My objection was always the way that it was kind of sold as inclusive for all sizes, and it's not. So that's my beef with it. If you like a drapey sort of dolman wing, you know, batwing dolman sweater, it's a great pattern. It would be an amazing stash buster because you are just making a rectangle. So you could do it in the same way that you do a blanket, you know, over a period of time as you get some scraps and some ends of projects, you could add to it. It would be amazing. If you're, you know, a slimmer body, fall within sort of straight size ranges, this will do you fine. My sister, my eldest sister, is starting to make one, and she's much slimmer than I am, and she will have a great looking sweater when she's done. It would also work very well because you are just making a rectangle, which I think is what really appealed to me. You could knit it, you could crochet it, you could do it in fabric, I presume. You could try out different stitch patterns, you could... Basically, it is a completely blank canvas for you to do as you wish, and that's great. So a great sweater for trying out different patterns, different colours, different everything. Just one that needs adapting if you're over a certain size. I don't know what that size is, I only know my size, so you would have to work it out for you, but it would be a fun experiment, just not something I'm going to spend any more time on. Yeah. Harry le deux? Nil point. No, that's not fair. Deux point. I probably will sling it over when I'm cold. It is a nice lightweight piece. I just don't know what to do with it. Flappy! Anyway, I hope that was useful. As I say, don't be put off by the pattern just because it hasn't worked for my body size. It would create a beautiful drapey... I agree, Heidi, entirely. I absolutely agree. No, it would create a beautiful drapey sweater for a lot of people, and you can have a lot of fun making it. I'm not going to make one for Heidi. I don't think she wants one. Hello, lovelies. As I'm in machine mode this month, I've been using my whirly machine to get some hats, make some hats. And I've used mostly Red Heart Super Saver. Now, this was some yarn that himself got me last time he went to the States, which was probably 3 years ago, certainly pre-COVID, obviously. And I'd never tried Red Heart Super Saver, but obviously heard about it. So he got me a couple of different colourways. So this is my favourite, which is the Favourite Stripes, funnily enough. This one is... oh no, sorry, Polo Stripes, Favourite Stripes. So just hats on the whirly machine, so a long tube. I used all but about 40 grams of both of the cakes of Super Saver I had for these two hats. So for this one, we've got a bit of a mixture. And as you can see, it's one long tube that you just cinch up the ends and then fit one inside the other. And this is using up some other bits of Aran weight yarn that I had in the stash. So a nice little stash buster. These are for homeless folks. There's a local charity that I give any hats to that I've made during the year. I'll do that as the weather cools, and hopefully these will do some good. We know that they will last as long as they need to, being Red Heart Super Saver. It's not particularly soft, but it will last, so hopefully that will do some good. Hello, lovelies. How are we? Hope everyone's okay. I don't know if I said at the beginning of the podcast, thank you for being here, but thank you. And if you've got this far, thank you for staying here. Yes, that was very ill-mannered of me, and I apologise, but thank you for being here, whether you're here for the first time or here for the goodness knows how many time. I really appreciate it, so thank you very much. With projects finished, as you can see, I'm actually hand knitting something. It's a bit of a rarity this month, isn't it? Apologies to any crocheting followers that you haven't had any crochet content this month. I will hopefully rectify that next month. But what am I knitting? I am making the sweater that the whole world has made, except me, until now. I am making a love note by Tin Can Knits. There's probably not a lot I can tell you about the love note because so many people have made it. It's a paid for pattern on Ravelry. It has a lace, let me show you, lace yoke. It's a crop length on here, but they do give instructions for increasing the length, which is basically knit more rows. Also, looking at the instruction, it has a straight sleeve, which I will probably taper, a personal taste thing. And this is as far as I've got, so not very far. Ignore the bright green, that's the Provisional Cast On. I've started with the yarn that I used for Mandy's Fingerless Mitts, and I've then gone on to some Norrow Cash Island. There are 4 balls of Cash Island in here, or skeins, and 1 already on the sweater. I just put it all into one cake because it was easier. I tied them in a loose knot so that I could untie it when I got to it and just have the ends there ready to weave in later. I'm getting quite used to weaving in ends this month. But it was just easier to have it all in one cake rather than 5 little cakes floating around or so. So that's that. I'm sort of taking advice from other knitters, the first being the lovely Valerie, who said, oh, make a love note. She's made about 5 of them, different gauges, different sizes, different styles, so it's a pattern highly recommended by her. I'm going to do an adaptation that Mandy from Mouse's Makes has made, in that she does a narrower lace yoke. She does fewer repeats of the lace, so I will be doing the same there. My favourite love note that I've seen was actually by Ramona of the But I'm Knitting podcast. That was purely about the colour. She did one in the most amazing orange, and it's the sort of orange that makes your mouth water when you look at it. You know, it's just a fabulous colour. She did, as many do, the fingering or 4-ply weight yarn and mohair held together. I am doing straight DK yarn, single, you know, not held with anything else. Partly because that's what I've got in my cupboards. So also, having found that the mohair held with other yarn sweaters are extremely warm for me, this will probably be better just as a strand of yarn. It's going to hold enough air and be warm enough as it is. It doesn't need another layer of fluffy air around it. So yes, that's the next project. It's on large needles, 5.5mm, 6mm, something like that. I didn't swatch. I'm normally, you know, I do swatch for things and block my swatches and everything. Yeah, 6mm. But in this case, because it's a loose fitting sweater and it's top down so you can try it on as you go, I'm just winging it a little bit. That just feels like a reasonable thing to do. So there's not much on the needles or the hook at the moment. Haven't done any of the snowflakes this month for my snowstorm sweater, which I showed you previously, and which is lovely and blurred. There we go. I hope to get back to that as I have those beautiful minis now. Thank you, Susan. They will be going into that sweater, so there's an impetus to get working on that, which is great. But yeah, that's about all I've got. I'm looking around at my sort of crafting corner. That's about all I've got on the hooks and needles at the moment. Who am I and what have I done with Leslie? Actually, I know I'm still me, because today's life lesson is don't mix salad dressing while wearing a white shirt. Today's podcast is brought to you by Vanish. Actually, I wish it was. When you're a podcaster, there comes a stage where you keep getting emails offering sometimes ridiculous amounts of money for basically promoting a product in your podcast. And they're spam emails mostly, and they tend to be predominantly for computer games. Now, some of you may be gamers, but it's not a natural link, I would have thought. You know, it would be there is a Venn diagram of knitters, gamers, and a few in the middle, but I can't imagine it being a huge overlap. So it's odd that I get offered that in particular, and like I say, most of it's spam. But yeah, if anyone watching works for Vanish and wants to sponsor me as, I'll even rebrand myself as the messy eating knitter if you like. That's fine. Just hit me up. I'm joking. I am joking. So we are getting towards August. We've had a heat wave in July. We are promised another for August. So wherever you are in the world, particularly if you're in the Northern Hemisphere as we go into the next month, I hope you're able to keep cool and comfortable. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope you're able to keep warm and comfortable. Nothing major planned, a few bits of drumming, meeting friends for coffee, sort of general, very pleasant stuff, and working. So that's this month planned out, and hopefully finishing a love note. So you may see this completed next month. Like I say, it seems to be working pretty quickly, and I'm hoping that will continue, but if it doesn't, knitting is not a race. I hope whatever you're working on you're enjoying. Don't forget, if you're using more than one yarn, the MAL is available if you meet the criteria. And just have fun with whatever you're doing. Please stay safe, stay well, enjoy your crafting, and look after yourselves. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.